40, 45 minutes, like super packed content. So probably not enough time for questions. We'll have an extra webinar session next Thursday if you have any questions unanswered. So without further ado, let's go right into it, shall we? Yeah. All right. So first of all, by way of survey, who was here last year already? Well, thank you. Who wasn't? Why? Anyway. So before we start, 3 points I really have to make and get across so that we can make the most of this session. First of all, I want to get out of the way. I have to make a confession to you, and I thought we need to get this out of the way. My last prediction for the industry, which I made last year for this year, was really an epic fail, and I wanted to apologize for that. So basically what happened was no, Amish cyberpunk did not take bestseller list by storm. Craig Martelle did not live up to his promise to write Amish Cyborg Pennsylvania Rising Part 1. So that was a pretty big disaster. I'll try to make a better prediction this year, and if you stay till the end of this presentation, then I'll promise I'll make a prediction for the next year, okay? And since security is closing the doors, there might be a good chance that you're still in the room. Now, the second point I need to get across is this one in the middle here. Any guesses? Popcorn, yeah. Now, my big issue is, mention data or big data or Amazon data or any data to an audience usually creates this reaction. So welcome to the most boring session you can most probably attend this year. So big data and data, very simple. When you work alone as an author, you have insights. You have the insights from working as a single person, usually perhaps the one or other friend, but basically it's this type of work where you go like, okay, I did book 3, promotion 12, that worked. And you sort of stick to that, and sometimes, it may or may not work again. Now, the next thing that can then happen is, and that's a really good thing, is working with your author friends. So here, this group is so marvelous, isn't it? You reach out to 35,000 people on Facebook, you have all the crowd intelligence, and you work with your best friends to get insights on whatever is bothering you as an author or a publisher. And then the next level is, and this is where we come into play, is if you say, well, add to this the inherent intelligence, if you will, of working with like thousands and thousands of books. So I look at thousands of books and have done so for the last 5 years for one single reason. You know what that reason is? That you don't have to, right? Yeah, and then the purpose of all it is to produce these amazing insights, like very intelligent exhibits, like this one, when you see a pie chart where you immediately know, all right. So the yellow area, just as a training for what comes, the yellow area looks like Pac-man. The rest of the area doesn't, right? So now that you know what data is, very important, and finally, this one here. The only reason I came to this conference was to find out whether we were on the moon or not. There is data, and sometimes you look at data, and it triggers all these big conspiracy theories. Amazon has been, just switching the algorithm or not, and this and that. No, that's not what we do here, right? So if you have conspiracy theories, keep them for you. We talk after the break over a coffee. Good. So let's harness the market forces, shall we? Yes. Good. So harnessing market forces, you go like, what? Market forces, very simple. My early experiences with market forces were like this. I was born in the 70s, a kid of the 80s, and here, Toy of the Year in 1980 was this one. Anybody had one of these? Well, see, I did not. And those were market forces. My mom and I, we spent like 2 weeks, going from one shop to the other. They were all sold out. So this was my very early experience of supply and demand and me being at the wrong end of the equation. So what does that have to do with you, authors, and the book publishing industry? Well, guess what? There are market forces at work also in publishing. Very simple here. For example, this is a Google search volume by search term for, on the left-hand side, paranormal romance over the last 10 years. And you may see, paranormal romance sort of peaked in 2011, interestingly, and then, but within paranormal romance there are other subgenres. So what may apply to the whole genre may not be true for certain subgenres within it. So for example, here on the right-hand side you have the interest for shifter romance during the same period of time. You get the idea. So market forces is all about, you know, catching those waves and being right in the timing. So when you talk about catching these waves, it looks like this, right? So this is from 2005 to 2019. Have a look here. The yellow one is vampire romance. First lesson learned, vampires never die. Almost never die. So, you know, after the Twilight blockbusters, that's what's going on. Paranormal romance red, and then, you know, this new kid on the block, like reverse harem, and there's a couple of other of these things where authors, you know, create new, basically new markets. And this is what this is all about, the combined power of the indie authors who find and create those markets. Now, talking about market forces, though, there are two sides to the equation. One is demand, which we just saw. The other is supply. So have a look at this. What you have here is, that is the blue curve is still the curve for reverse harem over the last 10 years or so. And, you know, it sort of, the whole trope came out of Korea, unserved interest, a sort of a takeoff, and people in Facebook groups start talking about it in, say, 2015, 2016. And the red one is the number of titles per month that then come out to serve that interest. So you see, after a high-profit niche time in a market, new kids jump onto the bandwagon, and you see what is happening. And that is where you want to be, is in that space in the middle, in that golden time of like largely unserved interest in your respective niche market that you operate in. And what I really love about these authors, by the way, they're so creative and then saying, okay, we rode this wave, let's just create the next one. And this is here the next wave, for example, academy romance, where you have like Harry Potter type of college romance, you know, then meeting the romance tropes and others. And this is the whole secret of supply and demand working together in favor of you, the authors, with the sole purpose being that when, at the end of the day, in the ideal situation, when your biggest fans order your books, it looks like this. So clear what market forces are? Excellent. And by the way, whenever you get frustrated that you are sometimes at the wrong side of the equation or you missed a certain train, well, from my early experience with that Rubik cube, there are always solutions. Yeah, there are always solutions. You just have to be a little bit creative, and there will always be light at the end of the tunnel. All right. So with this deep dive, let's go back all the way up and look at the big picture again. So the latest market numbers that Craig and Michael asked me to share, let's first look briefly at the traditional publisher's view of the world. What you see here is the last 3 years. That industry, according to the AAP, makes about, this year will be making, according to our projection, 8.1 billion in trade revenue. And the red one here is ebooks. So traditional publishers' view of the world is we will see yet another year of decline of these ebooks here in red. You see all their money is being made in the orange area, which is dark orange hardbacks, and the light yellow area, paperback and mass market books. So no wonder there's their narrative, e-books, who cares? And for the audio, though, that's blue. Let's bear this in mind. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. All right, so are e-books shrinking? Well, let's look another indicator, because the problem with the AAP numbers is Amazon is not part of the panel, which is sort of pretty bad if, you know, the one player who probably has 85% of the market is not part of the panel. So let's talk Amazon here. The alternative view is Amazon obviously publishes the size of the Kindle Select Global Fund. We project this year it's going to be $304 million by the end of 2019. So measured year on year from 2017, that's a growth of 18% per year, year on year. And as the pie grows bigger, obviously the percentages go down. So this year, that is a growth of like 13% year on year that this pie has been growing. By the way, I think it's also time, in this case, to say a big thanks to Amazon, because in July this year, the cumulative number exceeded $1 billion paid out in royalties to authors, and many of those were indie authors. So if that is the case, and if you then basically take a look at the pay-per-page rate, these have flattened out. They're fairly constant by now. And I know in all the Facebook groups it goes up and down, and people say, oh, the rate increased by X% this month. Well, keep the big picture in mind. It's right now around $4.65 on average per 1,000 pages read. So that number, let's say, is fairly constant. So if the Kindle Select pie is growing, but that number per page is constant, what does that mean for the number of pages read and ebooks downloaded? It goes up. So if you do the calculation, there will be 65 million ebook pages being read this year on KU, and that's like 19% increase year on year. Now, you can then say, well, how much of that is inherent growth of the ebook market versus a share gain of Kindle Unlimited? We made some calculations, conclude a lot of it has to do with share gain of Kindle Unlimited. So look at this. We looked at the what percentage of books are KU, in the top 100 rankings across the 30 main categories on Kindle. And what we concluded was back in 2016, about 45% of those were in KU, and by this year, it's 62%, right? So immediately you get this reaction, oh wow, any manipulation going on, Kindle books being preferred to other books? Well, yeah, they are preferred, but my hypothesis, or industry experts' hypothesis, is this. You have, as a reader, a choice between clicking on a purchase on the left-hand side or on a KU download on the right-hand side. If you're a subscriber, psychologically, for you, the book is free, right? So naturally, a free book, in inverted comma, free, will convert at a much higher rate than a priced ebook, a purchase. Now, there's no manipulation in the algorithm, but both downloads, borrows, and purchases do drive the sales rank. So it's almost like baked into the algorithm that over time, KU is outperforming the purchases. And as always, the story also changes by genre. So here you have it. Romance, very high KU. Sci-fi and fantasy, teen young adult also, right? So this is a bit about KU and what is happening there. But if you put it all together, the real good news is you indie authors keep rocking, you know? We updated last year's number, and the humble estimate of how much of the royalty pie goes to indies looks like this. Yay! So the money here is being earned at the top, right? If you look at this mountain, you have about the first 50,000 sales ranks, make the good bulk of the money, and the rest not so. So who were the best mountain climbers? Have a look at this. Any Romance authors here? Yeah? Well, you made it all the way to the top of the mountain. This is the share of Kindle store top rankings 100 achieved. So out of the store, top 100 in Amazon, Kindle, 20% of the top 100 rankings achieved were romance authors, followed by mystery, thriller, suspense, followed by sci-fi, followed by nonfiction and teen young adults, right? So that is basically what is being bought at the top of the chart. And in terms of the type of authors who achieved those top 100 rankings in the store, also good news, 38% of these top 100 rankings were achieved by indies. Congratulations. Yeah, I think you can give yourself a hand. Also very strong Amazon imprints, the big five, and then other authors. And also here, the story varies by genre, right? So you have, for example, if you look at it genre-wise, romance, very much in the hands of the indies here. So is sci-fi and fantasy. Thanks a lot, Craig. So is sci-fi and fantasy. Teen young adult, very strong. Mystery, thriller, suspense, very much contested by all the types of publishers here. So are all the other genres. But you see, the numbers do vary a bit by genre, and that is very important whenever you talk to your colleagues about insights. Things do differ by genre, and the numbers do show so. Now, this is those who climbed to the top of the mountain. And unfortunately, however, the case is what goes up must go down. So we took the time to do this little analysis here, looking at the top 100 titles over the last 3 years, and we looked at those which were in the top 100s like 3 years ago, and then looked at, well, after what sort of time, where are they then? So you see a top 100 title after 1 month on the left-hand side drop down on average to 17,000 in the store. Then after like 13 months to 84,000 after 36 months, you know, the sales are basically gone. Now, mind you, this is across all genres, and it is across, you know, all types of publishers, etc. So also, if you then look here, who is really good at managing the backlist and keeping those books afloat? Well, here also the indies totally outperform the big five and managing this backlist. You also hear this algorithm of KU books versus non-KU books at work, where you see that the performance of KU books over time, you know, as time goes by, they tend to remain higher up in the store because of that, probably because of that conversion factor. And if you want to see how Amazon imprints do on this chart, come see me after the presentation and I'll tell you. So this is what happened in the market overall, but there's obviously quite a bit going on when it comes to formats, and this one here will be of interest to you. If you go into the Amazon bestseller lists on the store, and for example, you click on the print bestseller lists on the left-hand side when you go to bestsellers and more, you will see, as you click down into the respective categories, there's, for example, here, take the romance category. Well, I clicked on print bestseller list, but the first 3 books are Kindle edition, then an audiobook. Lots of those are Kindle books, and we found books, many books don't even have a print edition. So we performed that analysis for the first time in 2017, which could basically tell you for every category there is, what is the respective share in the top 100 Amazon for that category of the various formats. Red is Kindle, the yellowish area is print, and the blue area is audio. We presented this one last year. We updated it. The overall journey ends here in 2019, right? Once back, this is 2017. This is 2019. And there are a lot of nonfiction genres on this chart. So if we click one further and only look at the bestseller list by format for fiction only, this is what type of formats achieve the top 100 rankings in romance, mystery, thriller, suspense, literature and fiction, and science fiction and fantasy and teen young adult. Pretty impressive, isn't it? So you see, this paints a little bit of a different picture than the one that we saw from the traditional publisher point of view at the beginning of the presentation. And today we also have a premiere here because you gave us homework last year, so thank you very much for that. You asked for it, and here it is for the first time. Also some initial data on audio, because if you have the Audible store and you have the Audible books and originals also on the Amazon store. On the Amazon store, these book pages come with sales rank information. There is not just a Kindle e-store sales rank, there's also basically these Amazon Audible books and originals store pages. They do have sales ranks, and therefore for the first time we can have a look, well, how are the average sales rank doing by category? This has never been shown before, so this premiere is for you. This is the first outside-in view on the audio sales on Amazon right there. So we have literature and fiction as the umbrella genre, unsurprisingly, but look at this, sci-fi and fantasy outperforming then here at the top, relationships, parenting, personal development. So very clearly that's what the stuff that people listen to when they drive to work, you know, personal development books, mystery, thriller, suspense. As you go down the list, you see, for example, romance, and that dovetails with the numbers shown before. You know, romance is in this type of format only here in the middle of the pack so far. So we will start doing this in more depth, more regularly, and also I think perhaps next year, next week in a webinar, we hope to have a further granular data on some of this as well. So here you have it for the first time, audio sales. So let's go deeper into those markets, especially for those who haven't attended before. Your challenge is very clear. It has become a crowded place, hasn't it? 6 million titles. The number is no longer published by Amazon, but since we track the increment every month, this is the estimate for this month. So quite a lot bigger than the Library of Congress by now, as no books get removed, really, from the store. 70,000 new titles come on board every month, and that means the supply of books, of ebooks, is still growing here with around 12% growth year on year. So you really have to know, where do I want to, where do I drill for oil or gold or readers or whatever you call those? And the problem is in many genres, especially non-fiction, if we take a look at our data, a lot of genres where there are like no sales whatsoever. So if you write about science, environment, and recycling, although it's a very hot topic, I thought, sales rank, average sales rank across the top 20 title is 2 million something in the store. So there are many, what we call dry wells, where there are categories of book genres, but there are zero sales. So the whole point is to look at the data to improve the odds, very pertinent to Las Vegas, opportunity out there. What you do with the words, with the sentences, with your imagination, there is, as many genres out there as you can possibly imagine. If you take like the more common genre definitions, there are about 7,000. And if you look at this sky and say, I want to make the choice between the yellow genre and the red genre. Let's imagine every star in the sky is a genre or a niche or a trope. Then you can argue, well, if you had a map to those stars, it could work like this. The higher up the star is over the horizon, the higher is that pot of gold, the level of sales, right? And the further that star is on the right, well, the higher is the level of competition that you face as measured in the number of books in that respective category. And we did that map to the stars for real. And if you take, for example, a book and compare those, then the real map looks like this. This is basically a plot of these 7,000 genres. Every little dot is a category on Amazon. The further it is to the right, the more competitive it is. The higher up it is, the better is the level of sales, the better is the sales rank. So for you as an author or a publisher, there are many opportunities out there, but you have to ask yourself just a little bit, well, do I want to go into things like mystery, thriller, suspense, where, endless number of titles, but also like super high sales, no doubt. Mark Dawson can do that, big ad spend, you're all the way high up there. Teen young adult clean romance, a very new category in Amazon with only, by the time we did it like a month ago, 450 English-speaking titles. Sales rank not as high, but still good. Or you could say, no, I want to write biographies and memoirs about country musicians. You can do that. Sales rank not so high, but you have only 28 competitors. You get the idea. So, and if you measure the book market this way, and by the way, the chart goes even further to the left. If you really look for them, you get like categories like this, where Amazon says, sorry, there is no bestseller available in this category. Please check again later. So if you have this in mind, you can start looking at like the health situation of the whole genres on the Kindle market. This, for example, is romance. Lots of green area, all right? Bigger markets, smaller markets. Sorry. So you have like bigger markets such as paranormal romance, medium markets, size-wise, like clean and wholesome romance, or you get like smaller niche market, teen young adult, post-apocalyptic and dystopian. And then you can start looking at these plots over time. So you would see things over time. This is data over the last 4 years. Paranormal romance, which we saw, had a certain peak, but we see now paranormal romance coming back again a bit, Bella Forest, a couple of big hitters going back into the genre big time. You have discussions such as erotica versus clean romance. The blue line being clean and wholesome romance was a huge trend over the last 3 years. Now it's sort of flattening out on a high level. And erotica, with all the limitations in advertising, saw quite a bit of decline, now getting more steady on a sales rank level of around 2,000. So it's really interesting. You start seeing, there are market forces at work. Let's have a couple of looks at other ones. Mystery, thriller, suspense, You can go into the big markets on the top right-hand side, things like cozy mystery, medium markets, such as, vigilante justice or crime fiction, or currently extremely strong, you see on the left top-hand side, what we call hot sell domestic thrillers with extremely high sales, but fairly limited still level of competition. Cozy mystery over time, it's been doing fabulous. This is the curve over the last 4 years. Who would have thought? Little old ladies crush it in the book market, I tell you. Yeah. And if you then look, at things like women's sleuths in red going up, paranormal in blue going up over 4 years, no wonder, things like witch, cozy mystery, and these things, paranormal mystery, sell like crazy. Mark Dawson's genre, Vigilante Justice, is what happened over the last 4 years. Any poets amongst you? Poetry on Kindle? Nah. Doesn't work so well. So you get the idea. Sci-fi, many green areas, doing extremely well. And also for the fantasy writers, by the way, if you go, and you have all those things in detail in your transcript in the downloadable presentation, for the fantasy writers, on the very left-hand side, niches such as teen young adult magical realism, some people say, that has been hot, last year. This is the numbers which do prove it. Mythical creatures, dragons. You get the idea, a lot of good things happening. Now, one thing I want to point out, though, is if you then do talk about this, writing to market and only going after the money, that is not going to work. Obviously, you need to write about something that you truly love, because imagine writing in the genre you know, like for the next 15 years. If you don't like it, it's not going to work, right? Craft, we cannot teach you craft here, but there are many good sessions, obviously, also about craft. Knowledge, you know, if I tell you legal thrillers do well, if you don't know legal proceedings and the market is God knows how good, you have no business in going after legal thrillers. But where those three things meet one thing, love, craft, and knowledge, come into a viable market with good marketing, that is what we call the magic zone. And this is what the whole, also the group that Michael and that Michael and Craig created is really, you know, going into this magic zone where your love, craft, and knowledge meets the market and meets your readers' expectations. All right, this is where creativity and success happens. Now, you might argue, though, okay, categories, that's one measure, and one can certainly work with that measure. There is also something to go beyond categories, and that has been quite a bit of fun for us over the last now 1 and 2 years. We've been experimenting with this because we all know in some categories you have, first of all, things like category pollution, right? You have books in the category that don't belong there. In some categories that is worse than in others. But there's many amongst you who say, yeah, but what I write cannot be like squeezed or fit into like a common category, right? So if you are a romance writer and you think about things like bad boy romance, there's no bad boy romance category, or a very strong market, female protagonists in thrillers. Oh, what's happening here? Tech people have gone and my screen is gone. Anyway, so in some of these, let me just check whether I crashed the cable here. All right, so if there's... cable is loose. No one here. So that's not the, that's the mouse. Okay. Are you going direct in here? What's happening? Okay. I don't have a Microsoft blue screen on here. It's not their fault. Something's coming up, huh?
Just go to the other screen.
I'll just restart the presentation here.
You're on the one screen.
Yeah. Okay. Let's...
There we go.
I'm not touching anything here on this end. Anyway, let me give you the story while people try to solve it. So you have categories such as bad boy romance, such as female protagonist thrillers, etc. And the interesting part, or take lit RPG, game literature. To the present day, there is no category for that type of genre, right? So superhero fiction, there is a category, but most of the superhero fiction books will be found in other categories too. So what we started doing is basically we go through like thousands and thousands of books and say, let's create our own category. So because you find in the book titles and or in the book descriptions, you find hints as to, well, if certain words occur in the title or book description, you can be dead sure this is a lit RPG, a literature role-playing game, or this is a superhero fiction book. And that way is like super interesting because you start getting basically bestseller lists that don't even officially exist. And for the authors amongst you there, it's a very...
Yeah, we did. We're good. I'm just trying to...
So for those amongst you who are in those niche genres, or especially ones that cut across certain categories, we also now have data for these type of books, because you will see that in certain markets, such as, say, literature role-playing game, it's a market that can go very high up in the store, but then once you reach the 100th novel in that genre, there's like a deep, what we call, drop-off into the rest of the market, into oblivion. So you see there are some markets which you really have to know, which are very high up there, but they are like in the hands of very few books and very few authors. So wherever you operate, you really need to find out, is this a market where, say, also the 2000s cozy mystery novel has still like decent sales compared to the first 100 in the list. You get the idea? So this way you can start thinking beyond just the Amazon categories and try to find out for yourself, well, where you operate, what is that drop-off and where does it occur? All right. So just to give you an example, and I'm just going to do this by words, and you will have a transcript later. What is then also like super interesting is that you can get clues as to what tropes are selling these days. And my most favorite examples is, are there any post-apocalyptic and dystopian authors here? Yeah, especially for the post-apocalyptic ones. I mean, this world is in shambles. We all know an asteroid is going to hit sooner or later, right? So what's really good is, the good news about the end of the world and the disaster is we now really know what it's going to be and what resonates well with the readers. So if we have a doomsday, then we can be clear this year is going to be either disease, illness, pandemic, or plague, closely followed by electromagnetic, electrical grid or blackout attacks, followed by some cold, frozen, snow or ice or freezing event, some attack, or then solar storm. By the way, the zombies have gone a little bit further down, so we're tired of zombies. So you get the idea. You get the idea. So there's ups and downs. You can do this in romance too, for the romance authors, for the bad boy, what is it? Is it the rock star? Is it the cowboy? Is it the really bad motorcycle gang guy? You get clues into these things, what is selling, what's going up, what is going down. Really interesting exercise. All right, so this gives you a bit what you can do in the market. Now, also your very author journey can be put into numbers. And last not least, so for those of you who are not already up there, high up in the charts, what is important, one-hit wonders versus power writers. We looked at some like 162 all-stars, Kindle all-stars. Well, guess what? 75% of those Kindle all-stars, they do have authors' portfolios of more than 25 books in their pocket. And the majority of these, like 35% of these authors, have been in the business for more than 5 years. In fact, 3/4 of them are in the business more than 1 year. So it doesn't happen overnight, So if it's for you not working as well yet, stick to it, because the numbers show that the marathon for many does pay off. So unfortunately, I cannot show you my prediction here on screen for next year, but rest assured, the opportunities are out there. There are still many, many opportunities, interesting pockets of the market. My prediction for next year, unfortunately, you can't see the screen. We put up pictures there. Have a look at the download. The prediction for next year is with Michael Anderle and Craig, obviously saturating the market in sci-fi. They started now venturing into nonfiction. And I wish that I could show you in the screen the covers of Nerdy Crafts, book 1, 2, and 3. I read them out to you. They are good covers. Galactic Knitting, Crotchet Bandits, and Quilting Gambit. So my big prediction for the coming year will be those guys going into nonfiction big time, into crafts, hobbies, and home. And I'll hope to come back and report on how this thing is going to play out in the year 2020. I hope you had fun. We don't have much time for questions, But what we basically did is, because we knew this is very dense data and you may have like 1,000 questions on your mind. So what we decided to do is, if you go into like your schedule, we have a webinar next Thursday, November 21. It's, I think, at 4 p.m. Eastern. If you cannot make it, we will have a replay. But because last year I could do 2 sessions and get all your detailed questions, so this year we're going to do it virtually, and we're going to do it next week. So if you have any questions, save them either for the panel that I'm going to be on later on market research, I think on Thursday, or attend the webinar next week. I hope, despite this glitch toward the end, the tech glitch here, you had a good time. I wish you all the very best. And hey, so little written, so much to write. Let's get at it. And it was a pleasure talking to you again. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Alex. I appreciate it. Good job. Good way to adapt. Thanks, everybody. Take a 15-minute break. We'll see you at 2. 2:30. That's what I said.
This is what you can later post.
Oh, geez.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah, yeah. Nice. Owning. You're going to be great. Maybe.
Can you do me a favor? Fill this up for me. I can get adapters here in less than 2 hours.
What's this?
This is, I'm getting 2 adapters that we need delivered.
Oh, I got one in my bag.